What's wrong with this picture? Nice night for a walk, eh? Nice night for a walk. Wash day tomorrow. Nothing clean, right? Nothing clean, right? Think this guy's a couple cans short of a six-pack. Your clothes. Give them to me. Now. You! Hole! Denny. Roll intro. Now. You! Hole! I'll give you a lollipop. Okay, man, but you gotta give me a minute. I'll be back. Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay. Do you recognize that scene, kids? Raise the hairs on the back of your neck. Now listen, Spotify. I know you're monitoring me right now, and I know you're listening because you're thinking about bringing out the Benjamins. You got Rogan locked up. You're looking for the next big thing. You got your eyes over here on the JHP. That's kind of a cool way to say it, the JHP. And you're thinking, uh-oh, dude is playing copyrighted material on his program. We can't do that. Want you to relax. Want you to relax, YouTube. It was not the actual audio from the Terminator film. It was just a reenactment. See, that's entertainment. So that flips it, right? I talked in the last episode about flipping things. So now Spotify and YouTube and all those companies that are itching to get a piece of this program, all those companies that are lining up their lawyers to contact my people, of which I have none, but I'll get people if and when the time comes. They're all getting ready to push over that briefcase full of money to pick up the JHP to broadcast to the masses. Now you can get excited because a second ago you thought I'm using copyrighted material and that, makes you feel crestfallen and down and worried. Then you find out not only am I not using copyrighted material, I'm producing it myself so convincingly that, man, the entertainment value is off the charts, and so you get even more excited. And ain't that what it's all about, kids? Me trying to get you excited. So that was a scene from The Terminator that formed the introduction to today's episode. And I don't have a lot of formative films, okay? Movies were not really a part of my life. Now, if you've been listening for any length of time, specifically about 5 weeks, you'll know that I grew up in the Christian world, grew up in the gospel world, grew up in the ecclesiastical world. And that little piece of that world that I grew up in, movies were not okay, man. You know what I'm saying? The same people that brought you the evils of rock music night with the backward masking also brought you Don't Go to the High School Dance and Don't You Dare Go to a Movie Theater. Even though on a couple of occasions I wound up going, generally speaking, the rule was, no movie for you, man. And so I did not grow up as a movie guy. Now, I know other people who had normal childhoods. They're like movie buffs, you know what I mean? And they look back with great affection upon the movies of their youth. And I can't really do that. I don't have a lot of them. Here's my confession to you. Not so much a confession anymore as a badge of honor. It's something I wear on my sleeve. I have never seen, hold on to your hats, kids. I have never seen E.T. Just going to give you a minute to just sit and think about the fact that I have not seen E.T. And I was like an adult before I saw any of the Star Wars movies. And chances are I haven't seen, or at least when they were released, I did not see whatever your favorite movies were. And I'm okay with that, kids. I don't really mind. As I said, I wear the E.T. thing as like a badge of courage. It's one of those things that makes me interesting. Clutching at straws ever so slightly. But yeah, having not seen that movie makes me kind of a big deal in certain circles, and I don't regret it. And I got it in the back of my head that E.T.'s kind of a sad movie, and I'm not into sad movies anymore, man. I got no time for that, so... Anyways, all that to say that I don't have a lot of formative movies, but of the few that are on my list, Terminator is one. Now, I'm going to go out on a line, going to float an opinion here, going to take a stand, going to take up a position. Terminator 1, the original Terminator, the first one, 1984, Arnold Schwarzenegger as villain, James Cameron, Los Angeles, California, is the best Terminator movie, and I gotta tell you, it's not close, okay? Now, I know a lot of people out there are all over the T2, right? They're like that liquid guy, Robert Patrick as the T whatever he was. T-1000? Want to say T-1000. People like that movie. It had all the big effects, big blockbuster popcorn movie. A pale second place to the original Terminator film. The original Terminator film has incredible darkness. First of all, genius story. Genius concept, all right? Man makes machine, machine gets smart, machine sees man as its primary existential threat, uses man's own weapons against it, and sends back a killing machine in time to kill the mother of its future adversary. I think this is a wonderful concept for a movie, right? And I think the way that film was shot, the way it was executed, it was gritty, it had a kind of darkness to it, it had this edge to it, it was... kind of a thriller, kind of a sci-fi, but really there's a deep horror element in that film. And it had a vibe and an energy and an atmosphere around it that none of the other Terminator movies, in my opinion, have come close to matching. There is no tension and fear and grit in subsequent Terminator movies that you see in the original. And Arnold as villain, way more effective for me than Arnold as hero. And then we got to, do a whole string of movies with Arnold as hero, which are fundamentally the same premise and don't move anything forward. I don't know when they created that movie, Jim Cameron, whether they had in mind an entire franchise. I don't know if it worked really that way in those days. But obviously the first movie was so good and so evocative and so provocative and so compelling, and it created such a mind-twisting, mind-bending scenario. And Arnold was so good in it, even though he had only something like 18 lines or 18 words of dialogue in the whole film. It worked, man, and you could take that premise and you could certainly expand it. And they've made, I gotta tell you, a regular hash out of it since then. There's been 18 different John Connors. Arnold's always got to be the good guy, so you've got to build your whole premise around that. So let's bring along an even more souped up Terminator for him to fight against. And then by the third or fourth movie, it just got way too campy, all right? It got goofy and it got silly. That first movie was not a funny film, all right? There was no making the Terminator endearing in that film. There was no making the hero, Michael Biehn, playing Kyle Reese, endearing in that film. It was a straight-up, dark, gritty, drama, horror, sci-fi film. But then the more blockbustery it got, the more franchisey it got, the more you saw Terminators on, pinball machines and, merch shelves, the more blockbustery that thing got, the more goofy it got. And so you've got the Terminator pulling the glasses out of his pocket and they're like star glasses. You know what I mean? They turned it campy and a little bit goofy and blockbustery, and in my impression, lost entirely the grit and the darkness and the atmosphere of that first film. The first Terminator movie, by far the best Terminator movie, and Arnold as villain, by far more effective than Arnold as hero. That's my 2 cents. Now, I'm not known for giving out opinions on this program. I'm not known for shaking your tree. I'm not known for rocking the boat, but I'm floating that out there, and I'm expecting the hate mail from the millions. All of you who defend Terminator 2 as the pinnacle of the franchise. And I find it sad that nothing after that is even in the conversation. Like, the rest of those movies made a mess of what could have been great. And it's too bad, man. And it's too bad that Eddie Furlong couldn't keep it together long enough to remain John Connor throughout that whole sequence. A bit of continuity would have been helpful, But you got 18 John Connors, and you got, I don't know, man. And then you've got revisions of revisions. And now you're relaunching the franchise with revisions to the original. And then you're trying to, computer generate the original Terminator back into the scene. It's not working, man. You made a hash of it. But that first movie, that standalone, that first one, that's the movie. Why am I talking about that right now? That's the next question on your minds. You're a discerning audience. You're an educated audience. You're an intelligent people. You're wondering, why is the dude talking about this right now? I'll tell you. I'll tell you why I'm talking about it right now, because there is a scene in that movie, the original Terminator, 1984, that comes back to me day in and day out for its message, its instruction, and its wisdom. Now, there's a scene in the film early on where we get a little bit of slice of life of Sarah Connor. Now, this is Linda Hamilton, and she's young, and she's living in LA, and she's doing the thing, and she's a waitress, right? She's working as a waitress in a restaurant, right? And so there's a scene where we see her having a rough day, and the restaurant's busy. Things don't seem to be going so well. They're just this side of going off the rails, and this guy's complaining because he hasn't got his coffee yet. And these people are complaining because he hasn't taken their order yet. And it's chaos. And if you've been in a restaurant like that, it can be a rough scene, And so she's having one of those days. Some of you may have forgotten that we used to do that sort of thing. Like, we used to go into restaurants, right? Like a bunch of us at a time. We'd all sit at the tables, and we could even be beside each other. And there was no mask, right? There was no mask. You could actually see people. You could read their expressions. You could talk to them. We used to do a lot of that, and I know some of you have forgotten those days. What we may casually refer to now as the good old days. But, try and comb through your memories and pull out the image of a busy, crowded restaurant. And then, throw in some big mustaches and some lapels and maybe people smoking cigarettes, and you can imagine this scene from 1984. And she's having an awful day, and so she brings 3 plates of food. She's a waitress. She's cradling 3 plates of food to this table. And the order's all screwed up, and they're trying to sort out what's right and what's wrong, and there's all this hubbub, and people are yelling. And then she tries to set down one of the plates, and she knocks over like a glass of water into this guy's lap, and then he's freaking out, and then she's freaking out. And in the midst of all of this, there's a kid. There's a little boy, a little jerk, and he's sitting at the next booth, beside where all this is going down. And you just see him. He's got his ice cream. First of all, who gets rid of ice cream? Stupid kid. Obviously went nowhere. He's got his ball of ice cream on a spoon, right? And he subtly, casually, quietly reaches over, dumps the ice cream into the pocket of Sarah Connor's waitress dress. And she just gives him this look like, WTF, kid. And then her friend comes over, her fellow waitress, Perky, a bullion, having a good time despite all the chaos. Comes over and says to her, look at it this way. In 100 years, who's going to care? And I have carried that line with me ever since that day. So, we're pushing, almost 40 years probably since that. 35 years. It's been in the back of my head for that long And it comes up all the time. Hey, man, in 100 years, who's going to care? So that thing that you're going crazy about right now that's driving you crazy, making you angry, giving you an ulcer, giving you gallbladder attacks, take your apple cider vinegar, which I had to do this week. That thing that's driving you crazy that doesn't actually matter. Stop and think. Before you blow up, before you yell at the person closest to you, before you lose your mind, before you bang your face off the counter, before you take that plate in your hand and smash it against the wall, before you ram somebody with your car, before you staple something to your colleague's forehead, stop and ask yourself, in 100 years, who's going to care? That dude cut you off in traffic, and your temptation, before you can reel back in that middle finger that he doesn't even see, or he does and he pulls a gun on you, before you let your anger just explode and wreck your whole day and frighten your children and drive your spouse crazy, in 100 years, who's going to care? Who's going to care about the stuff that makes you the angriest? Obviously, there's stuff that's worth getting upset about. Generally speaking, most of the stuff we get upset about ain't worth it, man. In 100 years, who's going to care? And this is like a magnificent philosophy and approach to all of that ego stuff, right? All that stuff that tugs on your ego. Like you didn't get that gig that you wanted. And that sucks, and it makes you feel bad, and you're angry, and you feel like everything's against you, and nothing goes your way. In 100 years, who's going to care? Didn't get that job you wanted, drives you crazy. In 100 years, who's going to care? Your spouse did that thing that annoys you, and you blew up disproportionately. In 100 years, who's going to care, man? Who's going to care in 100 years? Nobody! About almost all the stuff, right? So is it worth getting upset about? And that is the wisdom of the Terminator movie, the first one. That's a wisdom of the first Terminator movie. There's a bunch of wisdoms in that movie, man. This whole concept of Sarah Connor, this is relevant for 2020. Sarah Connor is this sort of mild, timid, not going anywhere, not super powerful, just young woman, just a girl, man. She's a waitress and she drives her moped around town. Doesn't know that she has in her such ferocity, such strength. This warrior is inside of her, right? And I remember watching this movie as a younger person and then seeing Terminator 2, where she's like ripped and focused and a little bit psycho. And it's like, I don't know, it didn't ring true for me because I watched the first movie and I'm like, this girl does not have that girl in her. Then I rewatched the first movie and I see her at the end and I see how strong she is. It begins to poke through, man, this ferocity that's in her, And she didn't know that. It took this horrendous thing, this machine coming after her, to make her express or dig down and find that ferocity in her, that strength in her that makes her actually Sarah freaking Connor, man. And, some of us could look at 2020 as a kind of Terminator coming at us, this relentless attacking machine, this virus that seems to be attacking, if not us directly personally, at least attacking the life we live, attacking this kind of framework, this world we live in. And maybe, like the Terminator with Sarah Connor, this kind of oppression we're under, this kind of attack we're under, this kind of difficulty, this kind of challenge we're under, will bring out of us our inner Sarah Connor. Will bring some of us to recognize the strength we have to endure and overcome and deal, Now, I'm just winging this. I didn't think too hard about this part, but it seems to me that that's a message of the movie. The message is you are stronger than you realize. And sometimes it just takes circumstance to bring that out. You have strength to endure. You have power to overcome. In fact, you can not only escape what chases you, but actually, as you see by the next movie, turn around and hunt what chases you, you know? You can prepare yourself for that. And I'm not necessarily talking about physical stuff, but maybe it's that. But this circumstance we're in right now that's making a lot of us crazy and is taking a lot from us may, you know, as a silver lining, another of these silver linings, reveal a strength of character that we did not know we had, and reveal a willingness to action that we did not know we had. And if things go wrong, and if somebody offends us, and if somebody does something that makes us angry, maybe we can ask ourselves, in 100 years, who's going to care, man? So I mentioned on an episode recently, it might have been the last episode, man, they blurred together for me. I can't remember. But I talked a little bit about, must have been the last episode, because I was talking about what 2020 has taken away. And in my case, I referenced, of course, all the gigs that I've lost and a couple of European tours that I've lost, and how that's kind of hitting me at the moment, because my Facebook feed, my Facebook memories are all full of memories of stuff that I posted from November of 2017, which was the first tour in Europe for the Sarah Smith full band. And looking at the situation now, having missed 2 opportunities to return there, and looking at a very, very uncertain gigging future for me, you know, those memories warm your cockles, man, but they also kind of make you pine for what you lost. And Facebook for me has really only a couple of primary functions anymore. I do not spend a lot of time on the social media these days, which was part of my dark summer of the soul, where the sort of intuition I got was for me to get small, be a little less visible, shrink away from this kind of stuff and go inside. That's a spiritual move, kids, and I needed to make it. So I did that, and I still don't spend as much time at least being super active on social media as I used to. I'm very reluctant to post things on there about my life. And that still causes problems for me. It still causes dissonance for me, because I'm doing a solo podcast, which seems to be mostly about my life. But apart from this, I try not to put stuff on social media about the humdrum day-to-day of my existence, because it seems to me to be such an ego thing. And I'm trying to shrink my ego. I'm still trying to get smaller in that sense, you know? And so I don't put on pictures every day on social media of the inane things that I'm doing. Because, I don't know, it seems to me that takes a certain amount of ego. And I could be reading it wrong, and I just sort of question, what's the point of that? Like, are you just in it for empty likes? Like, what's that doing for you, man? Is it really a valuable thing to do? And I'm mostly just speaking to myself here. I'm still kind of going around in circles, kind of doing a tilt-a-whirl about that. So I haven't been super active on social media, but Facebook serves a couple of important functions for me. One, it's a way to promote this program, and I feel a little bit weird doing that too, to be honest. And I don't like to fill people's feed with my podcast. But the reality is, you hope that people will listen to the dang podcast. And since, you know, Apple doesn't seem to be too keen to put me on any of their, hey, look at this lists, I kind of got to do it myself. So I apologize to those of you who are on the Facebook, who are, at least are my Facebook friends who see this stuff. And it's not like I'm flooding you. It's not like I'm spamming you, man. But I'll put up a couple of things every week about each episode, hoping anybody gives a crap. Now, if you sign up for my podcast page on the Facebook, that's the John Huff Podcast on Facebook, and you should join if you haven't, kids, because that's where you find out there's a new episode. Unless you subscribe on your favorite podcast service, your Apples, your Spotifys, your YouTube, etc. Please do that. If you have not, please do. Please subscribe, and that way, the new episode shows up right on your device. And ain't that fun, kids? And while I'm on here promoting, I could use reviews, man. I could use the Apple reviews. I could use the ratings. It does help me get a little bit more attention and notice out there. And it warms my cockles. And we could all use warm cockles right now. So, if you got a minute, drop by, leave a little review, preferably a positive one. And just let me know you're listening to the show. So I use the Facebook to promote and I use the Instagram to promote. A little bit, trying not to be too obnoxious about that. But the other functions that it serves, there are two. One, and this is going to sound cheesy, and I don't care anymore, man, because 2020 is the year of we don't care anymore. And in 100 years, who's going to care anyway? But I like the birthday notices. Ain't that sweet? Isn't that just sweet? Doesn't that warm your cockles, man? I like to see the birthday notices every day. And where appropriate, I like to send a happy birthday to people. Because I have a birthday. I bet that comes as a surprise to a lot of you, but I in fact have a birthday. And on that birthday, I am regularly blessed with several happy birthday messages from folks. From folks in my life, both physical and virtual, and I really appreciate that. And I know it's fun, and I know people like it. And what I'm trying to do is spread the cheer, kids. Now, 'tis the season, but I try to do this all year long, try to make it a calendar thing. I try to spread the positivity, man. That's what this podcast is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the positivity, spreading the good vibes, man. Try to make people feel good. And sending a birthday greeting is a very simple way to do that. So every morning, when I flip up my phone and a little message pops up and says, here's today's birthdays, I try to send a couple of birthday greetings to folks. Because that's my way of starting the day off with something a little bit positive, you know what I'm saying? So I use it for that. And it feels good. You should try it. It feels good to do nice things for people. Feels good to make someone else feel good. And if you can start your day with that, nice cup of coffee, nice pour over, nice strong brew, maybe a bowl of cereal, and a couple of birthday greetings, you're hitting the ground running, my friend. You got the positivity going, you got the caffeine flowing. Now, who doesn't want that? So I use it for the birthday greetings, and I use it to promote this little program. But the other thing I like, even though sometimes it chagrins me, is I like the Facebook memories, and I get to see a lot of really fun stuff. And 2020 has become kind of a year of nostalgia, kind of a year of looking back on the way we were, the way things used to be back in the day. It's got a little extra flavor this year, looking back at how things used to be. And as I've said before, right now, November, it's tough for me, but it's also really great because November was the month of that first tour. And then I wrote a book, and it's called November, A Month in Europe with Sarah Smith, and you can still get copies of that, I think. Go to my website. I gave the wrong URL last time. It's john-huff.com/shop. Not store, but shop. And we can probably still dig up a couple of copies of that book if you're interested in reading it, or you can just read the tour blog online. It's not edited and it hasn't got all the extras that the book has, but a lot of the content is there. Anyhow, that was November, and those memories are popping up now. But something profound happened a couple weeks ago, kids, because, it gives you the memory from that day for your whole existence on Facebook. And that's going to be 12 or 13 years for me. My, oh my, how time does fly. And I saw something profound, man. Now, have you heard me say once or twice, maybe 3 times, that good things happen when you put yourself out there? And that remains true, my friends. And if you listen to my last episode, you know that 2020 is a year for putting yourself out there, man. 2020 is a year for doing that, and good things happen. And I saw that illustrated for me a couple weeks ago on my Facebook memories, all right? Now, there was a memory from 2014 of kind of an advertisement for a show that my band Hiroshima Hearts was playing at the local university grad club. That's where we cut our teeth, kids. We played a lot of our first shows at the grad club, and in those days, we didn't really have our sound together. We were working on it, didn't really have our look together. We were kind of getting some stage time, cutting our teeth, figuring out our sound, figuring out our image, figuring out what Hiroshima Hearts as a band wanted to be. And the grad club was the grad club, man. So you got students coming in and going back out again. And, some of our friends would show up and eventually some of our fans, because we started to get a few. And we were having shows there. And so there was a message, a memory from 2014. Said, hey, we're playing the grad club. And how quaint is that? How fun is that? Now, this is my first foray back into playing drums in front of people after many, many, many years of not doing so. If you go back and listen to Solo-Sode 1, you can hear all about that. This whole process I went from being a really frustrated writer, not playing music at all, to suddenly finding myself back in the musical world and what's happened since then. So you can go get the backstory on that, right? But this was Hearts playing our first shows, my first foray back into music, and we were kind of getting our feet beneath us, playing the grad club. You start somewhere. Every band starts somewhere, and that's where we were starting. And we had some fond memories of fun shows at the grad club, and you fast forward 3 years, the memory right beside it, the memory right beneath it. No, maybe it was the memory right above it. Anyways, beside each other in some chronology, there was a memory of the same day, 2017. You fast forward 3 years, and I was playing an amazing little club called Emputzka in Dusseldorf, Germany, with the Sarah Smith Band. 3 years later, all right, we go from the grad club, and all of a sudden, in just 3 years, I'm playing a show at the cool little club in Dusseldorf, Germany. Now, I promise you that the dude who posted that little advert for the show at the grad club had no idea that just 3 years hence, he would be standing outside taking a photo of a club in Dusseldorf, Germany on tour. Now, I do not tell you these road stories to make you impressed by me or to give you the impression that I have a more extensive road resume than I do. That's not the point. And if you want to hear real road stories, like capital R road stories, go listen to the Dave Benedict episode, where Dave talks about, just bumping into Mick Jagger at a studio when Default was recording an album. Or go listen to the Danny Miles episode, where Danny talks about hanging out with The Edge when July talks out on the road. These are road stories, man. Now, I once stood behind the drum set with Steve Malella, I guess, who was playing for Finger 11, when Hearts opened for Finger 11 on New Year's Eve, direct support for Finger 11. So I did get to stand on the stage with the drummer from Finger 11 and talk about drums for a minute before he went up to play. So there is that. But, all due respect, it ain't The Edge and it ain't Mick Jagger. And so, if you want proper road stories, those are the guys to go and listen to. But I have done some van time, okay? Now, in this case, the medium is the message. The fact that I have done van time is what's important about my road stories, okay? The fact that I even have them, because 2014 guy playing kind of the first formative shows with his new band after being out of music for years and years and years had no idea that 2017 would come along just 3 years later, and the kid would be in Dusseldorf, Germany, playing this wonderful little club called Emputzka. Now, the rest of the Hearts, who are still going strong as Jen Marino and the Hearts, and if you're into the rock and roll music with a wonderful, screaming, powerful, amazing, awesome lead vocalist, that's Jen. If you're into that stuff, you should be listening to Jen Marino and the Hearts, and you should be subscribing to Jen Marino and the Hearts, because they too, and I with them, also went a long, long way from the grad club, okay? It wasn't just me breaking off and going on the road to play in Germany. Hearts went on to release a lot of great music and make some cool videos and open the music hall as direct support for Nazareth, and open as direct support for the Headstones, and open as direct support for Finger 11. They've played some really big shows, man, and I was lucky enough to be part of them, and they continue to do that. Hearts are a great band. They are still very, very close to my heart, my friends. and you should support them and follow them if you are not. You can hear some of our music, as I said, on my website, john-huff.com. So we all moved on, and none of us knew in 2014 that, we would be going on to open those big shows at the music hall, that I would somehow fumble my way along into touring in Europe. Now, some of you are going to say I got lucky. And to a certain extent, you're right. But I got to tell you, Secret Kids, everybody gets lucky. Everybody you see playing anywhere gets a little bit lucky. You got to be in the right place at the right time. But you still got to have what it takes to do the job, It's like people will be like, I'm not good enough to play, I'm not enough good enough drummer to go out and play shows or get to this level or whatever. It's like, you don't have to be the greatest drummer in the world, man. You don't have to be the greatest guitar player in the world. What you got to be is good enough for the gig that's on the table, man. Now, the better you are, the more opportunities maybe you're prepared for. I'm somewhat limited, I can admit that. But I was good enough for the particular gig with Sarah Smith, and I do it well, and that's cool, man. So yeah, I got a little bit lucky being in the right place at the right time. But if you go back and listen to Solosode 1, Put Yourself Out There, you listen to the tagline of my show, good things happen when you put yourself out there. You'll find that I had put myself out there. Now, it wasn't just playing in Hearts and forming that band with Tyler and Mike and beginning to get it off the ground and playing grad club shows and that kind of stuff. Okay, I got to know Sarah because I started a music blog, London Groove Machine, right? And I put myself out there, and I did that, and I interviewed her, and then I started a publicity company, Power Trio Media, and I took Sarah on as a client, or she took me on as a publicist, however you want to frame that. I put myself out there in those ways, and those things, those efforts, those small steps, those little pushes are what helped me make the connections that put me in the right place at the right time. Sarah Smith did not just pluck me off the heap and say, you want to be a drummer for me. I worked for her as a publicist for like a year or two before anything like that ever happened, right? So I was in the right place at the right time, but I was also providing a service as I was putting myself in that place. And I was not doing that with the hope that one day I would tour with her. That was not on the radar until the day she popped up and said, do you have a passport? I was not angling for any of that, all right? I was just putting myself out there. So we rolled into Dusseldorf, Germany. Lovely little town. I don't remember a lot about it. These cities tend to blur together because when you're on the road, you pretty much drive in, drive out, right? You don't often see a lot. People say, do you bring your wives with you on the tour? No, we don't bring our wives with us on the tour, generally speaking, because not all that interesting for them, really. Let's drive in the van for a bunch of hours and then set up and play a show and then get in the van and go to a hotel. It's not a lot of sightseeing. It's not a lot of going to look at a lot of things, you know what I mean? So Dusseldorf, I don't really remember, but I do remember the Emputska Jazz Club. We walk into this tiny little place, super classy. The great thing about the buildings over there, the venues you play, a lot of them are in buildings that are 500 years old. And you can picture a whole history of German folks from Dusseldorf going into whatever this place was called and drinking and smashing glasses over each other's heads and falling down and then hugging each other and going home in their lederhosen. You can picture that in a lot of these venues because they're old, man. And that's cool. Now, the Emputska Jazz Club is a really, really tiny little venue, man. You walk in, but it's got like this weight. It's got this class. It is a vintage, seriously vintage jazz club. It's something like 500 years old, this building. And you can feel that, man. There's like a must. There's like a patina on the place. There's a patina on the atmosphere, and you can just feel it. You walk into this place, and there's some tables, and there's a couple of booths, and you're like, this is a really cool little joint. Where on earth are we going to play, man? Because there was no stage anywhere. There's no stage. Now, there are places like that around here, particularly in Toronto, where you walk in, and it's like this long, narrow room. Toronto is loaded with long, narrow rooms, and I hope a few of them stay open by the time all this is over. And the band sets up on the floor by the front door. And you're cramped into these tiny little space, and you're playing, and people are banging into the headstock in your guitar, and there's this great moment, and it happens like 20 times a night, where people are getting up to leave during your set. But they gotta walk right past you to the door, and they always sort of come up, and they make a bit of eye contact, and they look sheepish, and then they walk out the door like they're so worried about offending you. And some people will at least say thank you. But for the most part, they just kind of look sheepish and walk out the door, and it's really funny. And so I was kind of expecting that at the Emputsko, and I didn't see a stage, but then there was no room to do that in the front door. Like, it was so small that you couldn't, man. And so we go up to the proprietor, and it's like, hey, we're the band. What do we do? And this dude whips out a couple of huge, like, planks. Like, I don't know what they were. Chipboard, something not super stable. And he throws them on top of a booth. He puts them on top of a booth, and he's like, there, now we have a stage. We're like, what? So he took what little seating space there was, and he turned that into a stage, and we set up on top of it, and a wonderful thing happened, kids. And if the good people at Istanbul Cymbals are listening, please contact me. Because the dude said to me, you know, I have a drum set here if you want to set that up and use it. Usually pretty high-level red flags happen when the venue says we got a drum kit here. Kind of like when the venue says you're going to stay at the band house and you brace for the worst. Typically when the venue has a drum kit, you brace for the worst. So it's either hidden underneath the stage somewhere or down in some cellar that just reeks of mildew and regret. And the drum set is covered with that, and the heads on it, the skins on it that you hit with the sticks, look like an aerial photograph of a First World War battlefield. Now, ideally you'd like those skins to be smooth, kids, okay? But these things will just be pockmarked and dug up, and there'll be craters in them from, decades of dudes just wailing on them because nobody respects the house kit. So I thought, well, I'll go down the stairs and I'll take a look at what he's got because it saves me unloading my stuff. And at the time, the rental gear we had, I had all my stands and hardware in this massive silver crate thing that weighed 80 or 100 pounds. It was a brute to move, man. It was like a two-man operation some of the time. So not having to take that out of the van, not such a bad thing. So I trundled down the stairs. In this 500-year-old building, it's like walking through sediment, it's like going down through the layers of time. And he takes me down and he shows me the kit that they've got. And don't I lay my eyes upon the classiest, most magnificent little Gretsch jazz drum kit. Smaller sizes than I would normally play, but a absolute masterpiece of a drum kit. Beautiful, vintage, it was sparkly. I'm like, oh yeah, dude, I'm playing that. And then he says, I've got cymbals too, and again, you brace yourself. Although, having seen the kit, I was somewhat encouraged. Dude pulls out a cymbal case, a cymbal bag, right? And inside are a set of Istanbul cymbals. These are Turkish cymbals. Absolutely like freaking butter. And those of you who don't play the drums may not get this. But all cymbals do not sound the same. And all cymbals do not play the same. And I had never played Istanbul cymbals before because Istanbul cymbals are really expensive, kids. So, not really anything I would go for, but I loved them. They were the most beautiful cymbals I've ever played on in my life. On a little makeshift stage on top of a couple of booths in a tiny club in Dusseldorf, Germany. And I remember to this day the feeling of those cymbals beneath my sticks. And Istanbul people, send me your cymbals. Please, I would love to endorse your cymbals. Istanbul, they were absolutely beautiful. And I remember the show for that reason, all right? Okay, part of me remembers wondering if my stage might collapse beneath me and make me another, fatality in the 500-year history of that room. Didn't happen. We played a wonderful little show there, and a bunch of Sarah fans were there. It was intimate, and it was fun, and just one of those nights you remember, man. And 2014 guy advertising for the Grad Club show had no idea that was coming, but good things happen when you put yourself out there. Now, on a set break, there's a photo of us, the three werewolves, the Canadian werewolves, Ken the Zen, Danny Boy, and me, on a set break, and we're out in front of the club, right? Just on this really old, awesome, quaint, beautiful street in Dusseldorf, Germany, of which there are many. Streets, not Dusseldorfs. And at a certain point, I was kind of had my head in my phone, and I was messaging back and forth with somebody, right? And if you read the November book, the entry on Dusseldorf, right, it says, I was Facebook messaging back and forth with a member of a prominent Canadian rock band. Now, I did not identify this person because it was it was in a blog, and then it was eventually in print, and so it's like maybe this person doesn't want her name mentioned in print that way. But 3 years later, I can tell you, the member of a prominent Canadian rock band in question was Catherine Calder. And who does Catherine Calder play for, kids? Come on now, everybody shout it out. The New Pornographers, okay? Fabulous Canadian band. Love the New Pornographers. They're like an alt-rock band. Really super. And if you're into the Bon Ivers and the war on drugs and that kind of stuff, check out the New Pornographers, man. They're great. And Catherine is a member of that band. Why was I messaging with Catherine Calder of the New Pornographers, standing outside a nightclub in Dusseldorf, Germany that I was playing, which is one of my favorite memories of all freaking time, by the way. Just the fact that I was in that situation talking to that person. It's because I interviewed Catherine twice for the London Groove Machine blog, right? So having put myself out there to play with Hearts, having put myself out there to start the London Groove Machine, having put myself out there to be a publicist for people, blossomed into this incredible scenario where I'm on tour, playing shows, getting paid, being in a wonderful club in Dusseldorf, Germany, and messaging with a legit rock star. And that's cool, man. And that's what I mean when I say good things happen when you put yourself out there. And that came back to me earlier this month via my Facebook memories. And it's a profound moment to look back and see where you've been and how far you've come. And that's about pushing through the fear, man, because I was terrified to get back into music. I was terrified to play in front of people again. And if you've heard the episode, you've heard me talk all about that. But the message resonates and the message reverberates through the history, man. Good things happen when you put yourself out there. And sometimes, on a year like this, when everything is so uncertain and you don't know what to do, and maybe you've lost everything and you don't know where to go from here, or maybe you're a little bit frightened to do the thing, sometimes Facebook, good old Zucks, will serve up a memory that just reminds you, if you take the step, if you try the thing, if you put yourself out there, if you accept a little risk, if you accept a little vulnerability, good things happen. And I take a look at that and I go, wow, Grad Club to Dusseldorf, 3 years. What? And for Hearts, Grad Club to playing the main stage at London Music Hall for like 1,000 people. That's huge, man. And that was, both times we got to do that was just wonderful. And it's like, this is what we play for, the opportunity to do this. But that was not dumb luck either, man. Hearts had to earn that. Hearts had to convince the booker that we were ready for that stage by playing over and over and over and over again on the Rum Runners stage. And then starting as an opener on that stage and then working up to headlining that stage and preparing ourselves for the bigger stage, the big room downstairs, Nothing fell into Heart's lap either, man. That band, my band when I was a part of it, we had to earn every bit of it, man. And that's the thing, but you got to take the step. You got to put yourself out there and then things happen. And man, thank you, Zucks, for reminding me of that. All right, one more little segment, kids, and then I'm going to kick on out of here for today. Now, I've had a ton of response, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of responses from the Triumphant Return episode where I talked all about the Van Halen and all about the AC/DC, and there's one question on everybody's lips. They say, John, what is your favorite hair metal song? Now, you're probably jumping through and thinking, well, it's got to be a King's X song, but you would be wrong because King's X is not and never was a hair metal band, all right? King's X is a rock and roll band. They are not a hair metal band. They're a funk band, they're a metal band, they're a grunge band, they're a soul band, all wrapped in together. But a hair metal band, they are not. They had long hair and they played rock music, and so they got lumped into that scene, but they're not a hair metal band and never were. And so it is not a King's X song that is my favorite hair metal song, okay? And what is a favorite hair metal song? I can't even give you. Who could answer that question? Who could answer and say, definitively, that's my favorite? That's the one. Can't do it, man, but I can give you a song that ranks as probably my favorite, or at least the one that I look at as the real gateway, or the one that I think of most affectionately as the song that represents it for me. And the answer is coming on the next episode. Ha ha ha! Pulled you in there, man. Left you a little cliffhanger, but what I'm going to do is give you something to think about, all right? I'm going to give you a bunch of songs that are among my favorites of the genre. And you can talk amongst yourselves on all the chat boards and all the forums and all of your John Huff podcasts that are out there. You know, after I drop an episode, there's all sorts of review shows that come up. Kind of like The Walking Dead, you know, Talking Dead, Talking JHP. They're out there. I know you're out there. I don't always listen to them all, but I do know you exist. And you're going to want to speculate on what I'm going to tell you is the formative, the quintessential, the song that I look at as the one that is kind of the hair metal song for me. All right, here's your options, kids. Number one is Love Is Not a Game by MSG. I have talked about this before when I talked about Robin McCauley. Wasted Years by Iron Maiden. That's a classic. Get It Right by Dirty Looks. Also talked about Dirty Looks on that Triumphant Return episode. If you haven't listened to them and you like hard rock music, go listen to Cool from the Wire because it is a classic. I've got Don't Stop Running by Y&T. I've got Down on Me by Jackal. Get your chainsaws out, everybody. I've got Fight for Rock by Warlock. Do you know that one? Dora Pesh, Warlock, Fight for Rock. Is that the quintessential hair metal song in my existence? I've got Hysteria by Def Leppard, and I have Fantasy by Bonfire, which is a band from Germany. Rock You Like a Hurricane by the Scorpions, one of the formative rock and roll songs for me, also a German song. This is Bonfire, Fantasy. Want you to chew on those tunes. Want them to roll around in your mouth a little bit. Want you to pour them in a glass and give them a sniff. Swish that glass, watch the viscosity. Want you to sample it. Want you to think about which one of those songs is the quintessential for me, the one that I look at as my hair metal song. I want you to write to me. I want you to take a guess. I want you to speculate. I want you to let me know what you think it is. And I'm going to give you that to chew on for the next week or so, kids. Hope it warms your cockles. Hope it keeps you going. Hope you're doing all right, man. I appreciate the feedback I got on the last episode. If you're looking for a little inspiration related to the 2020, go and listen to that. Might help you change your perspective on things. I'm going to kick on out of here because we're sneaking up on an hour. I've had a good time. Hope you've had a good time too. And remember, man, in 100 years, who's going to care? Bye for now. Thank you once again, gentle listener, for taking in today's show. If you want to know more about the program, go to www.john-huff.com. That's JOHN-HUFF.com and click on podcast. You can also find the show on Facebook at The John Huff Podcast. If you're an Instagram person, you can find me at JW_Huff. If you're a Twitter person, you can find me at JWSHuff. No matter where you listen to the show, please do me a big favor and leave a rating and review. Preferably a positive one. That's all the time we have for today, but I'll be back very soon. Until then, keep your wits about you and remember, good things happen when you put yourself out there. Bye for now. His name was Connor. John Connor. Your son, Sarah. Your unborn son.